Hey, can you hear me? One sec. I can't hear you. Oh,
Can you
there.
hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
It's kind of trapped in the house here with my dog,
What's your dog's name?
Franny.
Franny. Yeah.
Franny.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's just hanging.
So are you pretty much only working from home these days, or are you having to go out to the bookshop in Philbrook a little bit?
Yeah, back and forth a little bit. We're trying to minimize it as much as we can right now, and keep it a couple times a week. Trying to do everything remotely, which is not super easy, but
Yeah.
we're trying.
Yeah. I would say
How
the
are you
first,
doing?
I'm doing good, just working from home
Yeah,
and laying low, I guess.
it's all you can do.
Yeah. The first the first time I noticed this impacting Booksmart and Magic City was the Eric Larsen event, which was your first uh, online event, virtual event, and you had the
Yeah.
mayor involved with that before a lot of this craziness ramped up. So tell me about how that came about.
Yeah, so that was pretty crazy because it all happened really in like a day. It was we had been planning on this event. There had been some changes happening in the community, but not a ton of things. And we'd kind of been keeping an eye on it. And we kind of thought maybe this would be our last big event. Maybe we'd kind of shut it down. But I woke up that morning and, this thing is changing by the hour, right? So it just didn't feel right to do this thing where we were going to have hundreds of people in this one space. So like 8 o'clock in the morning, I called his publicist and said, "Hey, I don't feel like comfortable with this. Is there any way we could do kind of a virtual thing?" Then I called the venue, which is Congregation B'nai Amunah Synagogue, and I said, "Hey, how would we pull this off?" And they luckily had a simulcast set up that they used for services, right? So they already had this kind of pre-existing infrastructure, and they said, "Yeah, we can probably do that." And then I called our team at the bookstore to see how we would do that with like book pickup and all this stuff. So anyway, it took a zillion little bits and pieces. And I had to call the mayor's office and say, "Are you still interested in doing this? If it's going to be in an empty room, with just you two and talking at it, basically to a camera." And we set it up. And we had originally sold like, I don't know, 600, 700 tickets for this thing.
Wow.
And we ended up just during the live stream being over half of those people watching live, which was pretty surprising.
Yeah.
And then a lot more watched after that. And then we recorded it as a podcast, which we had not ever done before. And we sent that out to all the ticket holders so that they all had kind of just different ways to consume the content. And it ended up being a really fascinating interview, and the mayor did a great job. And it was kind of an interesting topic because the book in the last couple of weeks has become really popular too, because it really is about people kind of going through a really tough situation during the Blitz and World War II and having to kind of be in this really unpredictable moment. So it turned out to be a really fascinating kind of last big event before we hunkered down. So it all turned out great. And, but I don't want to do a lot of those in the future. I'm
Right.
hoping we get some real people back at some point.
Right. And that's probably the last virtual author event you guys will have during this period, because since this was before everything, he was already coming into Tulsa and he was already here. But
Yeah,
now,
we lucked out because he luckily he drives everywhere pretty much because he doesn't like to fly. So he was in Wichita, and if he hadn't been in Wichita, which was such a short drive, the flying stuff was already getting kind of crazy. So yeah, it worked out that way. I mean, especially having him here on site. But we are working on a couple of things where we actually will do a true virtual event, almost like the way you and I are talking now.
mhm,
Um, so there's a couple of things we're trying to do because we don't want to totally lose the opportunity, and we think maybe we might be able to pull off something. We have an event next week or so with a former Secretary of Labor named Robert Reich, and you know we had already sold a ton of tickets for that too. But with all this stuff happening in the world with like the stimulus and the kind of the markets going up and down, he's like the perfect person to really talk to right now. So
Yeah,
we're trying to figure out how we can maybe still have that conversation. So a lot of that stuff's in flux at the moment still.
that's great. And how has this changed your life? Because you're used to talking with different authors every week and being a guy about town. So how has this changed your workflow?
It's definitely weird. I was telling somebody this is probably the first extended period in over a decade where I haven't had any big events happening. And I've gone on vacation and stuff before, but usually other people take the reins, and we still have stuff going. But yeah, it's been a weird adjustment trying to kind of figure out how to kind of operate in this world, because our mission, whether it's through the museum or through the bookstore, really is, and I guess when you boil it down to really about bringing people together,
Right.
that really can't happen in a physical sense now. So it's kind of forcing us to be more creative than we'd ever been before, which has its benefits. We've come up with some really fun things that we probably will keep beyond this whole thing that we wouldn't have thought of maybe had this not presented itself to us. So.
Yeah. Can you talk about some of the changes that took place at Magic City Books? And you guys did a couple really interesting promotions and stuff.
Yeah, we kind of put in a place like a really kind of like a 4-point plan, like immediately. We'd always kind of avoided doing a online store because I wanted to be, brick and mortar, the anti Amazon kind of
Mhm.
thing. But, situation changed, and we needed to get a web store going like ASAP. So there's a great company called Bookshop, and they're kind of like the Amazon for bookstores, for indie bookstores. And they worked with us, and we got a web store up like in a 48-hour turnaround.
Wow.
So you can buy anything from our shop now, and it all supports us. It doesn't, the money supports what we do. It's not through some corporate thing. It's the nonprofit organization that helped us do this. So it kind of all feels of a part. So that was one thing, getting the web store going. We started a subscription service called Magic City Mailbox, which is a monthly, basically a book of the month thing where you sign up for 3 months at a time. And we pick a great new book. You can kind of pick your category you want to be in: fiction, history / current events, or memoir or biography. So whatever track you're interested in. And then if you pick your thing, you'll sign up, and then you'll get a new book in the mail toward the beginning of the month. And so we've done a ton of those already, which has been great. So that was that. And then we started, for a while we had curbside going, but that's kind of changed with some of the stuff, but that was successful. And then the most fun thing we did, which is also kind of defunct at the moment, was called solo shopping hours.
Hmm.
And basically we were saying, we'll let one person per hour come into the store and have the whole store to themselves. It's like the ultimate social distancing. But we were also like emailing them to see what their favorite music was. We would play their favorite music while they shopped, and they could really relax. And having a full hour in a bookstore is a nice, relaxing time. So, we didn't have like our coffee shop open or anything like that, but they could bring in a cup of coffee or whatever. And we booked like, I don't even know, like 100+ hours of shopping the first few days, and we
Wow.
did a bunch of it. We had about a full week and a half of that. But with some of the new restrictions, we've had to change that. But that's the kind of thing where I'll probably keep doing that once the bookstore reopens. We'll set aside some hours, let people do that, because people were just loading up with stuff. They were leaving with stacks,
Yeah.
because I think part of it was they were getting stuff for other people.
Hmm.
Like, hey, I go to the bookstore. What do you want? I'll get this for you. But it was really successful. And even though we had to kind of pause that too, I'm pretty proud of the team kind of coming up with these things right off the bat and getting creative. So right now we're doing online stuff only, but we're still doing our shipping out of the store, and we're still doing our subscription service. And we even have these things called literary care packages, where you just basically pay $50 and we'll load you up with as much stuff as you can get, and we'll just drop it off for you. So there's a bunch of different things.
That's great. And you're also the communications manager over at Philbrook. And so,
Yeah.
how has that changed your job with the museum?
Well, it's kind of interesting because the communications department, which I've been in now for going on 11 years, is kind of the department that has to kick into overdrive when something like this happens, because it's all
Exactly.
about external, everything's external at this point. So social media, video, all that stuff. They've had a pretty great, reputation and following for the social that we do at the museum. But we need to say, okay, how can we take that and, shoot some steroids into it and take it into the next level? So we've been doing that, not unlike a lot of places, but tons of live stuff, tons of video stuff. We One of the things I'm most proud of at the museum was we basically transformed our whole website in about a day, to where when you go to the homepage, the whole homepage is about kind of what you can do from home.
Yeah.
There's this kind of hashtag that's been trending called Museum from Home, and it's like, well, how can we experience the museum from home? We embrace that. So there's downloadable things for educational things, there's coloring activities, there's video, there's all kinds of stuff. We've been setting up concert series with local musicians in our log cabin that we have out in the gardens. So we call it the Cabin Fever concert series. So they just have one person at a time come out there and stream from the cabin live. And so it's been, super fun, and exciting and challenging and hard and frustrating and all those things at the same exact time. You kind of vacillate between, wow, this is exciting and we're trying new stuff, or gosh, how are we going to figure this out? But we always do. And I've been pretty proud of our team for that.
Has this taught you something about Tulsa or Tulsans coming together in a crisis like this? And what does it show you about your community that you maybe can't see under normal circumstances?
I don't know if it's specific to Tulsa. I think probably most communities have seen a pretty major uptick in the fact that you got to help each other out. And even though we can't really hang out together and see each other, we're going to figure it out. I guess we're lucky that we live in the age of the internet and the age of mass communication, so that we can still stay in touch and talk and share ideas and have book clubs online and do Netflix parties and talk about things and still watch the news and whatever we need to do. You wonder what this would have been like if this had happened in like 1991 or something. It'd be a very different kind of thing. So, sometimes I worry that the kind of smartphone revolution isolates us in a certain way, but I guess in this case, it's done the opposite. So maybe we'll learn some things about how to use our technology in a different way, after this, that it really is a tool to connect us and not just to play Candy Crush.
Yeah. For example, you also run the Museum Confidential podcast, and this is a
Yeah.
perfect time for listening to podcasts and consuming uh, new media.
Yeah, we did an episode. Our most recent episode was basically a replay of a webinar that our director took part in, which was basically about what the hell do we do right now? And it was him and a couple of other museum leaders. And the coolest thing about it was organized pretty quick, but there ended up being like 3,000 museum professionals
Wow.
taking part and watching this thing, because we're all in the same boat trying to figure out what to do. And that was pretty interesting. So we recorded that and worked with that company and kind of did the audio version as a podcast. But we're going to keep doing that. We have new shows coming out. Luckily we've pre-recorded some stuff, so we have a lot of content backed up. And yeah, we're in the age of podcasts. Luckily we had that going. We've had it going. This is our third season, so we've already built up a little bit of a following, and we have a nice audience for that. So hopefully we'll continue doing that. And we're kind of getting toward the end of our season anyway. Our season usually runs kind of the school year. We basically take the summers off to kind of plan for the next season, but we might do some little micro pods and little things here and there to kind of comment on what's happening in the world now. And, we'll see how it goes. So yeah, having all those tools at our disposal has been really helpful.
Yeah. And what books are you reading right now?
I'm reading, I just read this book called Stray, which is not out yet. And it's by a woman named Stephanie Danler. And she's kind of most known for writing a novel called Sweet Bitter, which is really about working in the restaurant industry, kind of what that's like. But this is a memoir, and it's really about her childhood growing up with two parents who were kind of very troubled, addicts, and it's a rough book, but it's really interesting, and the style is really fascinating, and so I just read that, and then I'm rereading uh, some Philip Roth right now. So I just reread Plot Against America because I wanted to see what that book was like before I watched the new TV show, and I hadn't read it since it came out, so I read that. And I'm reading lots of poetry. I've been reading a lot of poetry, just kind of sporadically. I mean, I never sit down and read like a whole book of poetry at once, but I'm
Right.
reading a few a day and kind of using the time to kind of do that more. So um, uh, I love Edna St. Vincent Millay, so I always read her. And then I was, you know, always going back to Ron Padgett, who's one of my favorite poets. And we started this cool series at the bookstore about 3 months ago called the Super Short Series. And what it is I have commissioned new work and we publish it on our front window. So I'm using our window at the bookstore as like a publishing avenue. So our first one was I commissioned a new poem by Ron Padgett that was up last month. And the current poem that we have up is by a Pulitzer Prize winning poet named Gregory Pardlow, who I'm sure you know, have met maybe. And he wrote this great piece that people can still see, I guess, if they drive by the bookstore. It's on the window right now. But we're going to have that. But we're also going to do these kind of micro flash fiction stories that we're going to have little stories on the window and just use that space. I was kind of driving by there one day and thought, we have this amazing space. We're on the corner. We have this beautiful window. Let's use it for something and get some new content out there. So that's something we've been doing. So I'm reading a lot of poems right now, trying to kind of research who I might want to ask to do future stuff like that.
Very cool. And what's I guess my last question would be, what's one thing you really miss about Tulsa that you're excited to go out and do when this is over?
I miss going to the movies. I go to the movies like crazy, and I spent so much time at Circle Cinema. I probably go to at least one movie a week, sometimes more. And it's kind of my moment to give myself some respite and kind of just break away. I usually go by myself and just use that time to just kind of decompress and just escape a little bit. And I definitely miss that. It's something I can't get back in there and watch the movie. Circle Cinema, I'm waiting for you.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Well, thanks for talking with me, and it's good to see you.
Hey, great to see you. Great to see you. Oh, did I lose you?
Yeah,
Oh.
no, I got you there. Yeah.
So yeah, if there's any follow-ups or anything, just let me know. And yeah, take care of yourself.
Okay, you too. Thanks.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.